him, and all hell breaks loose. But he's someone that writes quite a few articles for websites like vdare.com. That's VDARE.com, and various other venues. But he is an interesting academic who, in my opinion, came into that particular came under assault by sheer accident. By just simply writing a book about his opinion about Jews, basically presenting a hypothesis, if you will, in regards to evolutionary psychology and such a thing, and that type of thing. And you'll hear his books mentioned, like The Culture of Critique. And there's other academics too, as well. Someone that didn't end up getting a PhD like Bob, but unlike Bob, he's actually in jail right now. This gentleman, Germar Rudolph, and that's Germarrudolf. And of course, he is in jail in Germany, and he's an interesting character because as a young man, he was employed at the Max Planck Institute for Solid State Research in Stuttgart, Germany. And of course, he was a PhD candidate at at the University of Stuttgart. Sorry about that. He was a PhD candidate in the University of Stuttgart, and of course, they demanded. He was asked by a lawyer in Dusseldorf, to do a particular scientific study, some type of chemical study, and he was at the time getting I want to say a PhD in chemistry from University of Stuttgart, and they of course don't exactly hand those out every day. So basically, he was asked to do a study by an actual attorney, and he assumed that the study he would do on Auschwitz would confirm the actual government's history, because my understanding is he's a German, and Germans generally learn their history that they're evil people and that they did all these things, and he assumed that the study would reinforce this view. The official party line on Auschwitz. Well, lo and behold, the study did not. And all hell broke loose. And then, University of Stuttgart demanded that he retract his application for his final PhD examination, or else the university would deny it. And all hell broke loose behind him. And then, of course, after that, he becomes quite an anti-Semite. He ends up writing several different reports on the Holocaust, several different reports on the particular World War II, or what we will label 6 million revisionism. He becomes one of the scientists in that particular field, and he was chased all over the world and eventually ended up in jail. So he's just a normal German boy going to get a PhD. The next thing you know, he writes a report, he finds out something different than he should have found out, and he ends up publishing it, and all hell breaks loose. Which, for a scientist, you're in a Galileo type situation. But these are not uncommon to the paleoconservative or white nationalists, especially when you get into the 6 million denial, what is known as a Holocaust denials, or what the Anti-Defamation League and such call them. They end up usually going to jail because it's illegal in Germany to. It's illegal in Germany to question the official history. It's illegal in Germany to write books questioning the official story, whatever it may be. But he ended up doing that and going to jail. They eventually caught up with him, and he paid the price for it. He's still in jail this day, and I'll put up his Wikipedia. So in the white nationalist community, it's not really a paleoconservative or the 6 million denier. It's not uncommon to have a renegade PhD candidate, and even Bob Whitaker is a renegade PhD candidate. He never finished it. It's not uncommon to have these. I'm often asked about. I use one PhD in general. In general, when it comes to alternative news and research, and his name, of course, is Dr. Joseph P. Farrell, and he has a PhD from Oxford in patristics. And I'm always asked about his renegade background, that he got ran off from this university or got into it with that university and all this other type of stuff. And I guess he's been controversial at a couple of universities. And my explanation is that he wouldn't be worth a damn if he didn't. universities in America and the Western civilization in general, maybe the Russians, some of them are still okay, but in Western civilization in general, outside of Russia, in America in particular, if you have a professor writing books and he's not getting run off or not facing a lot of criticism, generally they're not saying anything original and new. And that's tragic. But I'm always asked that, and I find it rather entertaining, because when I first was handed his book to read, I actually put it off. And one of the things that caught my attention was some of the things he's saying. And I'm going to go into Dr. Farrell in one of the next podcasts again. But one of the things that when I put off reading his particular book, because he was another PhD writing about Nazis. Well, I've read all kinds of PhDs that talk about the Nazis, and none of them are really interested in the truth. They're interested in some version of the truth, or just selling books, which is fine. But generally, I put off reading them. But in his particular case, his type of thinking, the type of thinking that he was pointing out something original, and I was pointed out that someone let me know that he's pointing out something original, that you should really read this. You know, they called me up after the fact, and asked me if I read the book, and I said no. And it was, I believe, Reich of the Black Sun. And I said, no, he's another PhD writing this and writing that. And they're saying, well, you know, they pointed out his thinking process, and then they gave me the big kicker. Oh, he's been run off from a few universities. He's controversial. And I said, oh. If he's getting run off from universities in America for some reason or another, maybe he has something original to say. But I'll talk to him. I'll talk about him more in another episode. But I'm always asked about academics like him, because on one end you have he probably has tendencies, I'm sure he does, toward egalitarianism. And most likely against big business, but in his case, he wouldn't be interested in power over anybody. He seems like more of a pacifist, which is not uncommon in the 6 million denier industry. We have Ernest Zerndel, and he's a pacifist too. So that's not uncommon even in paleoconservative or white nationalist circles. That's not uncommon to have something like that around, even a pacifist, believe it or not. Ernest Zundel. I'll put up his particular Wikipedia too. He's another one that's been in jail. I don't know that he has a degree. I don't know that he has a PhD. I don't have his credentials in front of me, but he is a historian to a certain extent. And of course, and there are several around the white nationalist community. I'll post up Wikipedias for several that come to mind, but most of them are controversial. If they have a PhD, they're controversial. If you go against the norm, you're going to be controversial. Dr. Joseph P. Farrell, I can get around his egalitarian tendencies, and I can get around his, believe it or not, tendencies against big business if he can find me the truth on what he's particularly writing about. You know, there's a lot of people in Western civilization with a lot of qualifications. Not that those mean anything. But a qualification means you can do something if you chose to do it, but they really don't choose to do it because it involves going against the established core of the system. And in a university, the little departments are like little fiefdoms. And if you go against that, well, you're going to get some friction. And so that's actually what I look for. That's what I look for. You know, most people want to run from friction. Well, I want to read their books. But we're quite used to that in paleoconservative. Most of the others, you know, Europeans don't like conflict. So when you see someone causing a lot of trouble, you shake your head and go, wow, you know, he's just a glutton for punishment. Like Dr. Kevin McDonald, I mean, they attack him to no end. Right now they want to end the tenure process in America, I think, just to get rid of him. But it is entertaining when you have someone that can cause friction and offer something new on a particular subject matter, because all Europeans are capable of doing it in one particular field, even if they don't have a PhD in it. You don't necessarily need a PhD, and that's another problem with Western civilization. Everyone thinks you need some big degree in something to do that particular function. You don't. You don't. It means someone could do something if they chose to, like Dr. Farrell. He has a PhD in patristics. He knows a great deal about ancient languages and different pitfalls. He could choose to blow us away with stuff, but he has to make that choice. He has to choose to go for it. He has to choose to write about something like Nazis. And of course, he has to make a choice of trying to be unbiased and try to find the whole truth instead of some version of the truth. And that's not exactly easy for a lot of people to do, but it only takes one to set it on fire, set that particular industry or that particular, his genre is alternative news and research, and he set the place on fire. But Bob Whitaker, right now I had to put off a particular project. My job was to, they wanted me to do an MP3 for Why Johnny Can't Think. Why Johnny Can't Think is a caustic book. It is a caustic book. The forewords by a famous paleoconservative, Joe Sobran. And Why Johnny Can't Think, America's Professor Priesthood by Robert W. Whitaker. It's just a caustic book against the actual academics. It's against the academics. On some level, I view the academics as a sign of the time because they were so targeted with social engineering. I mean, how can you be, you know, they're targeting European children for extinction. Obviously, you spend that type of money to put up a Tavistock or a Frankfurt School. You spend the type of money to put out the books. You're going to wreak some havoc. But in this particular book, Why Johnny Can't Think, if you guys haven't read it, I would suggest you read it. But I put off actually transcribing the book into MP3s simply for now. We had a new website going up, and we have all this stuff going on with the in-game, and I have all this stuff going on with the characters for the cartoon, and all this stuff going on. So Bob said, put it off, don't do it, don't get distracted. But it has some fantastic mini chapters, and the chapters are no longer really than Bob's pieces on Bob's Underground Graduate Seminar, and it's linked on my website. Go to Bob Whitaker on my website, and you can go right to whitakeronline.org/blog. It's his particular blog, but the pieces in the book are very short. They're no more than 2 or 3 pages, but they're fantastical. Like Dr. Joseph Goebbels, constructive social critic ? And he compares and contrasts Noel Ignatieff at Harvard with Joseph Goebbels. And the point he's making is that Joel Ignatieff and Joseph Goebbels have a lot in common. The only difference between them is who they want genocide. You know, Noel Ignatieff says all whites have to go, all whites have to be annihilated, where Dr. Goebbels said all Jews had to go. And it is that caustic stuff like that he attacks academia, current academia in America. He calls it the professor priesthood, and the god of the priesthood is actually Hitler. Yeah, Hitler's the god of the American professors. Yeah, the professor priesthood has a god, and his god is Hitler. Most of us think that gods are good or righteous or something like that, but their god is evil, because everything Hitler was for, you would have to actually read the book. I'll tantalize you enough with that. But academics are an interesting case in late 20th century America. Every once in a while, you get someone that'll do something interesting, but the reason they become interesting is usually because they're renegades or radicals, or they go against the status quo. You know, because they're still European, deep down inside, some of them will jump out and try to find the truth in spite of the consequences. And even if you end up in jail, like the Mr. Rudolphs in Germany right now, or you end up attacked every day like Kevin B. McDonald, or you end up getting shown the door at some university like Dr. Farrell, getting into it with them, or however it ended up at his last university professor. He worked in a gambling casino after that as a floor manager of some type. But these are all interesting characters and interesting different projects that they're all up to. But from my perspective at least, but generally it starts with being a renegade. It starts with walking out. It starts with putting your, saying, this is a bunch of BS and I'm not taking it anymore, and I want to do what I want to do. I want to talk about this, or I want to talk about that. But, academics always kill me. They always kill me. But there is no group that has done more to cause harm to Indo-European children than the modern professor priesthood, as Bob Whitaker calls it. Part of that was because they were so targeted by social engineering programs, and part of it is just that a lot of them are by and large evil. They've gone the way of the dodo. CEOs, I think, are a lot easier to get rid of than the local tenured professor in the sociology department, whose standard policy is white rabbit genocide, the death of the white race, as they say. That's their whole priority. And like I said, in the name of academic freedom, they'll ban you. They'll ban your curriculum. They'll deny you PhD. They'll deny you a PhD. They'll do all kinds of things, all in the name of academic freedom. And this extends all across Western civilization now. These actual social engineering schools, some of the early pilot programs are what